If everyone could take your seats, please. Matt, would you mind closing that door, please? Thank you. The chair will call to order the meeting of the CUSD 201 Board of Education. Roll call, please, Mrs. McMahon.
Mr. Armstrong.
Here.
Ms. Caparelli.
Here.
Mr. Charleston.
Here.
Mrs. Charlton.
Here.
Mrs. Hancock.
Here.
Mr. Price.
Here.
Mrs. Thomas.
Here. If we can all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I just have one change on the agenda. The public comment underneath that we have celebrate success with the WTA. They will be coming next meeting.
Right,
for
the
that?
30th.
Okay. So we will move straight forward with the public comment. Dan Seisnell, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dan Chanel, and I am a Miller parent. But even more so, I wanted to speak tonight briefly because of my concern for the 201 district at large. As we all know, against the recommendation of the superintendent, the board voted 4-3 last month to reduce 2 class sections from the 2nd and 3rd grade at Miller Elementary School for the 2013-2014 school year. During the discussion that took place before this vote, there were board members who indicated that class size difference between Miller and Manning constituted an unfair and unjust situation that need be remedied by increasing the class sizes at Miller. The decision to do this now becomes a punitive action toward one group with distinct challenges in order to address this perceived unfairness. So I would rhetorically ask this question: who benefited from increasing Miller's class sizes in those 2 grades? Did some child at Manning benefit from this decision? And how was anything made more fair in Miller, a school that already struggles with a significant achievement gap relative to Manning, even with its smaller class size? Was the goal to make this achievement gap even larger? Because that will be the likely outcome. How long will this board wait to address that question? And what impact will this have on the district's academic outcomes in later grades for these already struggling children? It certainly can't be good. This can only be seen as part of the justification by those board members to address one issue by causing another, all in the name of a kind of perception of fairness and justness. In watching this discussion and subsequent vote at the meeting last month, I was disappointed to observe what was happening. In trying to find a way to staff the needs of the other schools in the district, the discussion instead turned into a partisan Manning versus Miller debate about fairness. Lacking by the majority in that decision was the foundation of the core ideal of unity of the entire district to meet the needs of all. We are a small community school district, and I believe that the school board failed to engender an attitude and atmosphere that we all are 201. We are not just Miller, or just Manning, or Westmont Junior or Senior. While our schools in 201 have different needs and challenges that all need to be addressed, we cannot address one problem in one area at the expense of another. I was very disappointed that the board decided instead to divide the interests of the district instead of considering the good of all together. It is my opinion as a concerned parent that the board needs to move forward with its focus as having the interests of the entire District 201 as a whole, not as the interests of one school versus another. I believe that this is the perception that was communicated last month, and I would respectfully ask the board to reconsider their decision. Not in the long term, but now, because these kids and their families and their teachers need help now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay. Maria Gomez, please.
Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es María. Soy una mamá de un alumno de Miller Elementary School que va a estar afectado por su voto a doblar el tamaño de clases el año que viene. Quiero hacer notar mi disgusto acerca de esta decisión. Es que creo que su punto no es justo. Somos un distrito una comunidad de nuestra escuela, quiere decir que es la responsabilidad, como los miembros, asegurar la mejor educación para todos los alumnos. Esta decisión a reducir la cantidad de cuartos de 2 a 1 va a poner un esfuerzo sobre la experiencia educativa de nuestros hijos. Deben tomar otra manera de resolver estos problemas que la escuela afrenta, que sería justo para todos. Su decisión parece ser castigar a los alumnos y demuestra poco ejemplo de líder. Pido que descubran otra manera de solucionar este asunto, sin quitar el bienestar de nuestro título 1, Escuela Miller. Espero que los estudiantes, nuestros hijos, puedan seguir desarrollando y tomando éxito en su educación. Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Dan Charleston?
Thank you. Thank you. I felt compelled to address this board tonight from the podium as a citizen, not as a board member, because the decision this past month to double the class sizes of second and third grade sections at Miller deeply disturbed me. So with respect to that, I'd like to offer some history, which is probably in order. Historically, Miller has run 2 sections per grade level, 1st through 5th grade. The attendance boundaries for Miller generally run west of Cass, north of Naperville Road. So north of Naperville, west of Cass, running all the way up to 35th Street. Since the combination of South and Manning in the 2007 and 8 school year, that we have historically run 3 sections of each grade level at Manning, 1st through 5th. Attendance boundaries run west of Cass to the north, to the south of Naperville, and fully north and south within 201's boundaries to the east of Cass. Miller, per its 2012 report card, has just under 200 kids. The demographics of that enrollment look as follows. It's 52% white, 13% black, 26% Hispanic, 7% Asian, and 2% other. They are 48% low income, 18% limited English, 18% on IEPs, with a mobility rate of 21.8%. As a result, and in particular of the low-income piece, Miller is and has been, for as long as I can recall, a Title I school, receiving federal funds to help deal with the unique challenges that low incomes create. Manning presently has, per their 2012 report card, enrollment just over 450 kids. The demographics of that enrollment look as follows: 77.4% white, 3.7% black, 12% Hispanic, 4.3% Asian, and 3% other. Manning is 27% low income, has limited English of 4.8%, and 14% on IEPs, and a 4% mobility rate. Because the attendance boundaries are what they are, section sizes at Manning's have averaged 22 to 23 for each grade level, with some bubbles in certain grade levels, creating section sizes of up to 25 or more, which resulted in this board adding sections in those grade levels because 25 and more was deemed unacceptable. I must note that, and while at Miller, let me go back to Miller for a second, they average around 15 with some bubble classes in the high teens and low 20s. I have to note that we've never asked Mr. Carey to make a presentation to this board or the community about alternative attendance boundaries or grade school attendance formats that could otherwise address the demographic and class size differences that exist in our district, our unit district, 201. With respect to achievement, 2012 report cards, even with substantially smaller class sizes, Miller's average meet and exceeds percent on its ISAT reading tests is 75.1%. Manning's is 91.9%. That's a 16.8% difference. For the 2012 report cards, even with substantially smaller class sizes, Miller's average meet and exceeds on math is 84%. Manning's is 94.7%, 10.7% lower. Demographic challenges at Miller are impacting the standardized test performance, and I'd argue that the 5 times higher mobility rate are impacting, as well as ELL and IEPs are especially relevant, as well as nearly twice as great low income. Study after study demonstrates that low income has an enormous impact on academic outcomes, and not because those kids can't learn, not because of that. It's because those kids tend to come from single-parent homes, where homework help is hard to get, where not every child has a Kindle or an iPad, or even a computer at home. And imagine, if you will, being a Spanish-speaking parent, one who can't help their child with 3rd or 4th grade science projects because your English is limited. And you have a hard enough time with English words, much less scientific questions and concepts. Can you imagine not being able to help your child with their grade school homework? This is the daily reality for many poor and ELL families. What does it mean for students and parents? What does it mean for teachers? What does it mean for teachers? This is why Title I exists, because those environments need more resources, not less. Our goals, our academic goals, are to be a small giant.
Excuse me for a minute, Dan, just so you know, it's coming up on the 5-minute mark for public comment.
I would hope that I would have some latitude. This is a fairly important question and a fairly important issue.
How much more do you have?
I have about half a page.
Half a page? Okay. Feel free.
Our goal is to be a small giant, to be a small school with large opportunities, not large class sizes. So when Jack Balderman came to this board and said his test scores had gone down and he needed staff to make interventions happen right away, the board gave him those resources because it was the right thing to do. When Manning's section sizes were 25 and 26, parents and staff at the school approached the board through the administration and asked that sections be added. The board did that and gave those resources to Manning, an exceptional and already highly achieving school. It was the right thing to do. When John Jonak came with a request for more resources to add academic alternatives and to address needs, this board gave him those resources. It was the right thing to do. When the administration came to this board with its recommendation for full-day kindergarten, expanded childhood, this board provided those resources, both capitally and operating, because it was the right thing to do. This board is now, and certainly should have been aware of, a desperate need at Miller. It's not a long-term need. Those kids need resources now, just like all our other buildings, all our other kids, which is why I'm so confused about the decision to actually reduce those resources. It can't have been an economic decision. Our operating fund cash balances are $3 million higher than they were 2 years ago. We will run our 3rd straight operating surplus this school year. It can't be economic in light of all the other resources we've been providing elsewhere. The contract that gave staff raises for the next 3 years. This board, I think, owes every kid, every parent, every family, every staff member a better way to look at the question. Donna Risden sent board members a very eloquent email after that meeting, and I'll paraphrase. We're a small town. Our children and our families play baseball together, are in scouting together, play softball together, worship together. At some point, will we in this board have the courage to educate our children together? I strongly urge this board and the administration to reconsider the decision, because until we do, we will never become a great giant. Estos niños necesitan su ayuda. No más tarde. Ahora. These children need our help. Not later. Now.
Stan, can I ask you one quick question?
Non-public comment.
You've been a board member for over 4 years now with the power to put stuff on the agenda anytime you want. I'm just wondering why you never bothered to ask the boundary question to the entire board.
The boundary questions have come up. There has been a refusal to address them at the board level.
Public comment? Okay.
Okay, Joelle and
Siska.
thank you.
Looks crazier than it sounds.
And I know you, and I just can't remember.
Yes, my name is Joelle Siska. I am a parent of 2 Miller students. And I want to say that your job on the school board is a very thankless job. You don't have people coming and patting you on the back, and quite frankly, sometimes the only time you see people are like me when you've angered them enough. So this comes with all the respect in the world, and it's a disagreement, and I'm appealing to the board for their better sense to go back from the vote from last month and desperately reconsider it. The same thing that the 3 people before me have said still applies. And I believe that one of the things that this district is lacking is a communication before things happen. I feel that a lot of times my experience from the board has been, oh, we did this, but here's how we're doing it. And as a parent, I'm sure most of you are parents or were parents or grandparents or aunts, uncles, you know that the best way to empower a parent is to make them a part of that process. Make me feel like I was a part of that decision, because I might not like that vote, but if you make me feel like I'm a part of that decision, my mind might change based on the information that I'm given, that I'm not given prior to the vote. So that is one way that you can really empower the community, is to give them the information before you make a huge decision on what you are going to do to change my child's academic future. It's 2nd grade for my daughter. It's 3rd grade for my daughter. It's everything that their foundation and their building blocks. It is my responsibility to stand for her, because she cannot stand for herself. And what I need from this board is the ability to have the information beforehand. Last month, I found out hours beforehand that the board was going to vote on whether or not my child was going to go from a 12 students in her class, which is very small, and we are very lucky, and I'm not saying, that can go up, to 25 to 28. And I had no ability to come here and let you know my thoughts on that, or to understand your thoughts on that. I don't entirely know. I went and watched that board meeting, and I still don't understand why this is happening and why this is occurring. To me, it's a robbing Peter to pay Paul. What's going to happen in 2 years? Miller's kindergarten, if you combine them, is at 32 students. So in 2 years, we're going to have to go again and willy-nilly decide, let's go back to 2, let's go back to 1. It's very fluctuant. That is not what is best for the students and for the students at hand. Let us be involved. There needs to be a rule or a law that states that the board is not allowed to make any votes directly affecting my child's education without 1 month notice. Give us 1 month, because we're very intelligent people and we might come up with different ideas. I might really want to hear what you have to say. We can have good dialogue and discussion. Now all you're having is flare-ups and anger, because I didn't know. PLCs, that was another, quite frankly, disaster in my opinion. I found out at school registration that you're cutting 40 hours from my kid's class time, and I was told you don't have to make it up. It's a whole week's worth of class. You don't have to make that up. Isn't there standards? I don't know these answers. These are answers that you would know, but I couldn't find anybody to ask, because I never see any board members anywhere. I never see any board members saying, this is a hard decision we had to make, or this is a great decision. I hear PLCs are supposed to be fantastic. I still have no idea why my children are getting cut an hour's worth of class time every single week. Why? Because the board voted before you let the public and the parents know why. I would love to know. If I had more information, I would probably really love PLCs. I'm all about giving the teachers every aspect that they can get to make it better, to make my child's education better. As far as I know, this was just taken away from our children. I don't know what they've done with PLCs. I don't know how it's benefited, and I've received no information. You need to do things beforehand so that we can be on your side and we can support you. We need to see you. This decision was made, and then a meeting was held at Miller School last Wednesday. And Mr. Carey, who stated that he was against this, that it could wait, was thrown to the wolves, and we didn't see any one of the board members there. There was nobody there saying, you know what, it is a tough decision, and this is why we made it. And this is what we're thinking of. Give us the information that perhaps we're lacking so our anger can be diffused and we can join on the same side together and realize, you know what? I thought they weren't really for this, but I see where they're coming from. I understand now. Knowledge is power. Without knowledge, it's ignorance, and you're going to upset everybody, and it's not good. You need to start letting the parents know what you're doing before you're doing it. You're dealing with my child. You're dealing with their children. You don't have the right to make those decisions without letting us know. I am here for my child, and I hope that everybody on this board is here for the children. Because if you're not, then you should respectfully resign, because I don't need anybody on this board that is not here for every child within CUSD 201, no matter what school they go to. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel.
Okay, are there any other public comments? Okay, then let's move on to the consent agenda. So, do we want to
Probably need to discuss
Probably.
kindergarten.
Yeah, discuss the.
It's on.
Shin. Being prorated to $1,000 for students that qualify that are at 185% of the poverty level, which is the demarcation for a reduced price lunch. And then if they are at the 130% of the federal poverty level, their fees would be zero. They would have a fee waiver. And we had another proposal from the board, and that's attached as option B. And at the 130% level, again, that the fee would be zero. And then they're looking at the 200% guideline. That fee would be $900. At the 250% of the federal poverty level, that fee would be $1,300. And then looking at the 300%, the fee would be $1,700, and then over 300% of the federal poverty guidelines, they would pay the full $2,000 fee. So one of the things that the board needs to discuss that. In my memo, I put that we were using the two guidelines that we use for free and reduced lunch. And that one of my recommendations when we meet next week, the Finance Committee, I'm going to talk with them about our fee waiver policy in general, because right now we don't require any income documentation for fee waivers. We're using the income that they provide off of the National School Lunch Program. And we feel that it would be in the taxpayer and district's best interest to require income verification for the fee waivers. And so we're looking at having a policy consistent for all of our fees.
So the question to the board then,
is.
We've got those two options. The one option would be when it comes to the tuition, would be basically there's I guess 3 levels of tuition for families that qualify for the free lunch program. They would not pay tuition. If they qualify for the reduced lunch, then they would pay 50% or $1,000. Or if they don't qualify for any type of assistance through the lunch program, then they would pay the full tuition. And then that would be prorated over 10 months for those parents who would like that option. Then the other option would be, I guess, more what would be termed a sliding scale, in which there are we look at it and we assign a different level of tuition for each of those percents.
Would we still be giving the monthly rate to people if they wanted to?
Yes.
Well, I made my point clear at the last meeting, I believe. I'm all for making it as affordable as we can for families. I definitely would back option B in this plan.
Well, when we talked last time about having some sort of sliding scale, and the original proposal that was in our board book had just the two, I really wanted to see it expanded a little bit beyond that. I envisioned a sliding scale that went a little broader than that. And so I think we want to have the fees that are going to allow as many people to participate as possible, but still help offset the additional costs that the district is going to incur providing full-day kindergarten. So, and having it built just off of the same model that takes into account income as well as household size, I think is a very fair model to work from.
So, Kim, do we currently collect just the information for free lunch or reduced lunch? Do we collect enough levels of detail currently to support this robust sliding scale?
Well, right now, people just have to fill out the application and provide that, and we are only allowed to verify 3% of all the applications through the free and reduced lunch program.
Okay, so how would this work differently?
We would actually require everyone to submit documentation, so a tax return, check stubs, things like that, and actually verify their income, and then base our determination off of that.
And do we have the appropriate system and manpower supports to handle a more robust sliding scale?
Do we have enough man-hours? No.
Can the system handle?
It's not a system thing because you have to
Okay.
look at it. I mean, you can enter the information into the income level into it, and it can spit out whether it's free or reduced. Although, again, if we enter that information into the National School Lunch Program, it only has the 130 and 185% levels. So anything beyond that is a more manual calculation.
And do we have any idea between the two options how it changes our projected income versus expense?
I didn't run that. Again, we're probably only talking about 50 students, so it's not significant. But option A generates more revenue than option B does.
Weren't you suggesting that we change that way we do low income to that other option for all fees, or is that just?
That will be a recommendation that we bring to the board at the next board meeting, that we verify income.
And then, based on what Shannon had just said, is that a labor-intensive thing that we can't maintain?
It will be more labor-intensive than what we do right now, but I think that the benefit to the district will offset the additional labor cost to do it.
To verify.
To verify, yes. Because right now, we have, when we look at our fee waivers, we waive about $104,000 of fees so far this year. And the number of students on direct certification is 215.
And what's direct certification?
That means they automatically qualify for a fee from the state based on their income level. They are automatically granted a fee waiver, and the state's verified everything. Then 106 students are on reduced price lunch and 211 on free. So it's not quite a third. And then the fees for direct cert that have been waived were $38,500, for reduced $22,900, and for free almost $43,000. And so I think, There are a number of school districts that do verify 100% of the income for fee waivers, and there are many more that are going to be introducing that option for this upcoming school year.
I guess this is probably, and I apologize, this is the first time I've ever really understood how that works. And if all we can check are 3%.
And that's for the National School Lunch Program.
Right, for the national school. So I think that it's, I would like to make sure that the families that need the services get the services. And so by just verifying the income, then they would continue to receive those services. So we're not trying to take anything away from families who really deserve this.
Correct.
So I'm happy to see that that is something that the Finance Committee is going to be looking at, because obviously according to the chart here, obviously these amounts are pretty small. So I would be very interested to hear about making sure that the families that get the services get them, and that we verify that everybody is appropriately applying for what they deserve. So I'm happy to. Will that be then? Would that then come to the board after the Finance Committee talks about it?
Yes, we'll present that information to the board.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that.
So income verification would be for all-day kindergarten, fee waivers, but not for lunch, right? Because we're locked into 3% only?
Right.
Okay.
And there are provisions already in the policy about fee waivers for special circumstances, medical bills, other crisis situations that families find themselves in. So that will still obviously remain.
Right, there would be some latitude.
So in terms of, just kind of following up on something that Shannon said, in terms of if we went with, let's say, option B, so once you verified information, once you verified income, you would be able to plot them somewhere on this graph, per se, those kindergarten students, and then apply whichever fee is the board agrees to.
So, I think we had more information when we got the first set of numbers about what the income would be versus the expense. And for option B, you can kind of ballpark it in your head, I guess, but we don't really know if we were to select option B, how much that potentially reduces our revenue. And we already went down from the original amount that was suggested, $2,500 to $3,000. Now we're going down. I'm just a little concerned that we don't actually know what we're deciding. We're deciding based on it's good for families that are lower income and to have a sliding scale. But we're not looking at the other piece, which is how that affects our revenue versus expense, which is sort of how we made the initial decision. So I'm just a little concerned about, not maybe having that same information when we're making this decision. So I don't know.
It was,
I
the
hope that
option
makes
was
sense,
presented to me today, so I
Okay, that's fair.
quickly
Okay.
did
I
what
just,
could put together.
yeah, I think it's hard because we know what the projected expense is. We know roughly what our $2,000 mark gets us. We don't know how option B would be projected to affect our revenue and how far out that puts us on our expense. So I don't know.
But it clearly means that the option B would create a greater subsidy to the full-day kindergarten program. At issue is how big that subsidy is. Our current subsidy, based on the quick estimate at $2,000 for 50 kids, was that you were going to get $100,000 in revenue plus or minus against $140,000 worth of cost. So we were already looking at the district subsidizing $40,000 worth of full-day kindergarten. Clearly, option B subsidizes it further. Again, I'm bewildered and befuddled about where our priorities lie. Because in other situations, we say we can't.
If additional students, that is under the assumption that the number of students doesn't change between option A and option B. And, we really wouldn't know unless we ran both, in different years or something. It's hard to know. I would think that more parents would find it affordable and participate, and you may have more students in the program, whether they're paying $1,300 or $1,700. You may generate the same, income if parents say, no, I can't afford $2,000. It's hard to know exactly what an individual family is going to think about this. And so, I look at this year, I really want to see as many kids in it as possible, but I understand the importance of having a fee associated with the program. So, I think this whole fee schedule for this, for full-day kindergarten is going to probably need review once we get some actual data on how many families are at these different income levels. We don't even know. We don't know where our families are at income-wise because we don't ask for any income verification. So we know our free and reduced, and we know those numbers, but we don't know anything else.
I think it's really difficult to go backwards, though, to say the price is low and then to come back with a way higher price. It's harder for people to accept that. I think not knowing doesn't give us an excuse to go and give away the farm.
Well, I don't view it as giving away the farm if we get additional students signed up for the programming based on the what I think most parents would view as a very fair fee schedule.
I guess I go back to last time when we talked about this, we still don't know what, like preschool. I had to ask a comment about what the cost is that parents have for preschool currently, and what the number of parents that we have that go to, what are the number of kids that are in our kindergarten that were in preschool. And if our number's below that at the $1,700 mark, we are, I guess we're going to have those kids. So why reduce it more for them? I don't have enough information to make that number make sense to me.
And I think after this first year, we'll have more additional information to be able to make that decision. And if the board determines at that point to raise the tuition, that's another conversation, a different year, but with more data.
Are you done, Diane? I just thought of something, and I like how this comes about, because I didn't think about this before. But, for instance, if we lose families because they say they can't afford the $2,000, and again, I agree with we have to verify income. I think that's something that we just need to do as a district. So I guess it's going to be somewhat skewed if we have parents that say they're not going to enroll their children in full-day kindergarten because they can't afford it, as opposed to parents who say that they think their children are ready for half-day kindergarten. You know what I mean? Because there's going to be people, I've talked to people, and there's some people that say, I don't think my child's ready for full day, I'm going to stick with half-day. So I think it's an interesting thing that I am just seeing now, that if we either go with three options, 0, half, or full price, are we losing anybody? Are we losing anybody that would have signed up if it had been a sliding scale? So I'm just kind of thinking out loud here on that. So
Also, the bottom number of 900 does, more families will fall into that 200% category, and it's less than, $100 less than what's being proposed. So the families at the lower end of the tier will benefit, to a greater extent as well than compared to option A.
I'm almost inclined at this point just to, can we have option C? No, I'm almost thinking maybe I don't know, maybe stick with A, and then once we find out and we do get data, then we go from there as to what next year will look like? Can I ask this question? We had, the previous information that we had was about 80 students we're looking at, and we're thinking about 50 will pay. Is that right, from what we had before? Okay. So you were, at that point, thinking, just from what we know, then?
Right.
Okay.
50 will be participating or 50 will be paying participants?
It was paying participants.
Paying participants.
80 participants, 50 paying participants.
And the original 2,500 to 3,000 took into consideration those other students either qualifying for a tuition waiver or at a lower tuition rate. And at that time, thinking like the $1,000. And so that's how we came up with that figure.
I'm almost going back and forth on either one, saying we're making a decision, and obviously after next year we'll have more data. We will now be verifying income for a number of reasons, and we will be seeing.
Well, we kind of have the data already about option A. What we wouldn't have next year is any data about option B, how many families would really fall in those categories and how much revenue would we bring in that. We can kind of project A right now, but we can't really project B.
I think next year we probably could.
No,
Could be.
my
No,
point is
it-
just
'Cause how
verifying
you-
income.
Regardless, because separate from this discussion, Kim's suggesting that we start verifying income, which means we would have data that we could project from that we don't currently have and won't have for this year.
Only for the 130 and 185.
No, she's suggesting, separate from the kindergarten discussion, that we verify income.
Correct.
Not related to kindergarten, not related to free lunch or reduced lunch, because we can't do that for that program, but that we do it for fee waivers and that type of thing, which means 100% of the people that are applying for waivers of some kind, we would be verifying income, which means we would know from a percentage perspective across the district who falls into each of these percentage categories. Now, obviously, per grade level, it'll be a little different, but if you just take the district as a whole, you would have your averages, at least, and then you would know, if you take the district average, X number of people fall into 135%, X number of people fall into 150%, X, that type of a thing. We won't have that for this year, but we would have that if we verify income beginning this coming school year.
Are you talking a particular option, or are you just talking in general about verifying?
In general, when you talk about being able to project, we can't right now.
Well, we kind of can from the information we have of people that are utilizing free and reduced.
Right, but not for
we're not
option
sure
B.
that's totally accurate.
Right, but not for option B. We don't have the level of detail to
Right.
project.
If we did
Other
option
than
B,
guessing.
we would have that information to then, look at it again next year and see if that was a good choice or not. I do think it will be a better choice for getting families, into the program that might be on the fence.
Isn't the point, though, that for all full-day kindergartens, whether we're option A or B, we're going to verify income, right?
For all the district.
So even in option A, we're going to find out.
Right.
So,
Only if they're applying for a waiver. Otherwise, they pay $2,000 with option A.
Right,
no, well.
Right.
Right.
If they're applying for a fee waiver, we verify income.
Yes.
right.
Right.
But they're only going to apply if
Otherwise, we don't
if
care.
they know the numbers, they're only going to apply if they know you're verifying. So, and, like I said, we kind of have some of that information already, but we don't know how many families, fall into the other categories, 200, 250, 300 and above.
So
Yes,
one,
sir.
one thing tell me if I have this correct. So let's say you have 80 students, 80 students. So you'll be able to say how many families, based on who applies, what their income level is, based on
Right.
when you verify it.
Yes, we can
So
do
we'll be
that
able to
if we
say next year, we have 80 students, and X percent fell under the 135, under 185, 200, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with doing option A for the first year, just sort of keep it simple. And, we've already knocked down quite a bit from where the original recommendation was, and I think I'm pretty comfortable with starting there and then using increasing levels of data. I mean, I think in the mid to long term, it would be great if we didn't have to charge for kindergarten, but that means, fixing some of our revenue issues in the bigger picture. But for me personally, I'm comfortable on the decision we made last go around, and that we could manage that level of fee schedule. And at that point, we had discussed the free or reduced lunch as being kind of benchmarks. So I don't really see. For me, I'm comfortable sort of staying with that as our starting point, and then using whatever data comes in over the next year to make adjustments.
I'm leaning toward option A. I'm also looking at the dollars in and dollars out, and in the 200% column, is there any way that 100%, that 2,000 could be adjusted, maybe down to 80% or something a little bit less than, we go from 50 to 100 in one step. With the difference in income for two-person household being, a little less than $3,000. And we go from 1,000 to 2,000 with nothing in between. Could that one column be tweaked at all or not at all?
Well, we can do anything, right? That's kind of the point here, I guess.
That's
a different option.
It's just that I'm just looking at the dollars in and dollars out, and when I see those dollars in, that seems like a big jump, that income. I'd also like to just touch on the additional children. I know that there was what I consider a very small discount for additional kids, and I was hoping maybe that could be bumped up a little bit as well, maybe 50.
Well, let's stay on this one for a second. What would you, just what you're saying on this, so then what you're saying would be then a third option, and under 200%, you would say what?
Yeah, change it from 2,000 to, 1,700, or, something a little bit more palatable than 2,000.
Why not just say 1,500 then? 1,000, 1,500, 2,000.
I'm fine with that.
I can live with that. I was kind of looking for something else. One thing I was looking at, Kim, and thank you for providing this to us too, was the comparison. And so again, it's really, we are in such new charter territory here, because when you look at the comparisons, that how many districts in our area don't even offer this. And the one district that, some don't charge anything, well, that Naperville, and Wheaton charges $4,000. And many others don't even, Marker, Downers, Butler, Elmhurst, Lyle don't even offer this. So it is kind of like we are starting a new thing.
And Wheaton does have a couple other levels to their tuition. They just introduced those recently.
Right, and then they have a registration fee. So I just all of a sudden thought I'd look at that while we're talking about this. So I like what Mary Kay said. If we could take option A, but changing the third column, the 200% to 1,500, so you'd have 0, 1,000, 1,500, and then the last three columns being 2,000 each, especially when you kind of do look at that amount. It jumps up 50%, as opposed to 185 to 200 is 15%. 200 to 250 is 50%. So.
Well, I still like option B, but that's.
Okay, is there any other comments before we vote on it? Any other
Could
comments?
you support that change to option A or no? Could you support that change to the 200% column going to 1,500?
I'll support whatever you recommend.
Do you have a recommendation or any thoughts
Well-
on that?
You know, the original recommendation was obviously I guess 3 different possible fees. And that's part because one of the things that Kim mentioned, using the federal guidelines, you can input the income and it more or less tells you at what level it qualifies for. Any additional lanes that we add as a district, that is done manually then. So it does become a little bit more labor intensive as we add different lanes. So that's the only thing. I mean, in terms of how much work is done by the business office changes depending upon how much is added to. So what you're asking, Mary Kay, option B is more labor intensive than a modified A that you're suggesting.
And again, what you would be looking at, and what we could look at next year or next spring or whatever, is what this year looked like in terms of those 80 families, where they fell on this scattergram, if you will. Right, so there could be a list of that. So much as I would hate to add any work to anybody, I kind of like having the 4 levels, especially, again, because it's not just a 15% bump, and that next one is 50, so. Okay, so shall we call that C for clarity sake, everybody? C will be modified A.
Define what it is. So
I know, that's what I'm going to, C is modified A, so 0 for the 130, 185 is 1,000. 200% is 1,500, and then the last 3 columns, 250, 300, and over 300% are all 2,000.
Yeah, and
Did I
really
capture
it'll
that
be
correct?
Yeah, and really anything over 200% will be 2,000.
So 200% between 185 and 200 is 1,500.
Right.
Yeah, I was just kind of
But,
reiterating
I
the chart.
would choose a different poverty guideline as far as when you go from 185 to 200, that's kind of a small range. So if you're going to go 1,000 at 185, then it seems to me like you might want to go 1,500, like at the 250 range, and then anything over that would be 2,000. So there's a little more of a spread between.
So Marie, I can support Mary Kay's suggestion if we want to.
Okay, so hold on,
Okay, so you go from 130 to 185, that's 55%. So why don't you add another 55% to 185, and that's your last and final.
Discount?
So what is that, 240? According to what you're saying? What's 185, and what did you say, add
You'd add 55 to that.
55%, so that's 240? Is that what you're saying, Joel?
And then what's the third level, or the next level?
Well, anything above.
Anything above.
So what you're saying then is to take your option that you're talking about, Joel, would be to take the 200% and make that 240% at 1,500, and then leave 250,
Anything above that
300.
would be,
Anything above 240.
Okay, that will be option D. Is everybody following?
no.
I'm not sure how that works, because if it caps at 240, where's the 1,500 step in, and where's the 2,000 step in?
Well, we have the 2 different options. What the first option was, 1,500 comes in at 200%. And now with this one, Joel, correct me if I'm wrong, you're saying eliminate the 200 and go from 130 to 185, go right to 240. Am I right?
130,
Joel?
185, 240. 185 would be 1,000. 240 would be 1,500, and then anything above that will be the 2,000.
Well, there's no bracket for 1,500 then. So it
And
could-
the bracket for 1,500 would be between 185 and 240.
What you're saying is to take out 200 and make it 240,
To change that to 240.
right? Right, Joel?
Take out 200, make it
So-
240.
So take out the 200 bracket and make it 240.
Are these percentages federal guidelines, or did you
I mean,
just,
so those-
did you just
so-
create these numbers?
No, the
So these are upper
130 and the
brackets?
185 are the
Percentages,
federal
yeah.
guidelines. And so
Top number
then the proposal that was presented to me to present to the board created the other, the 200, the 250, and the 300.
So it's not terribly,
85.
it's not
Between 180s.
terribly cumbersome to change these percentages right of 185.
It's all manual calculations.
But it is with 200, 250, and 300 too, right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, so the proposal that Joel's saying, which we're going to call option D, takes that top line of federal poverty guideline and changes it to 130, 185, and then 240, and the rest remain 250, 300.
Well, there are no other, above 240 is going to be 2,000.
Right. I'm just looking at what we have in front of us. So then what your proposal, option D, we'll call option D, is the first column at 130 would be 0, 185 is 1,000, and then the 240% is 1,500, and then anything over 250 is 2,000.
Anything over 240.
Or anything over 240, anything over 240. Did I capture that right, Joel?
I mean, that's right. Of course, I'm in favor of option B. But, I mean, if this is where, if this is where it's going to go, I'm fine with that too.
Okay. Okay, so, shall we start? Diane? Gary, somebody? Want to, Mary Kay?
I'm fine with option D.
Okay, so Mary Kay, you can support option D. Who wants to? Joel?
I'm B,
Gary?
I'm B, but I'll go with D if there's a majority for that.
Okay. Gary?
I will do the same. I prefer B, but I will go with D if that's the majority.
Diane?
I'd prefer A, but I could go with C.
You're saying you go with A, but you would prefer A,
Correct.
but you'll go with C. Okay, Dan?
C.
Shannon?
C.
And I would go with D. So we have 4 people at option D. 3 at option C, option C being the second. Did I get that correct?
I think so.
Okay, so option D. Okay, we have that now? We understand that? Okay, so I'm going to put that on here. Okay, so that takes care of kindergarten. And I'm sorry, Mary Kay, you want to talk about something else? You had brought up another issue of fees?
Oh, just that I had hoped, I know there's a mention of a $25 per, I think, third student, if I'm not mistaken. I was hoping maybe that could be bumped up to 50, maybe 25 for the second student, 50 for the third.
We don't do a discount for the second student.
At all?
At all.
Okay, not in any,
Only,
okay.
no, the third and subsequent.
Okay, so could we bump up then the third? I mean, in the case that there might be triplets or such?
So isn't the recommendation to eliminate the multi-student discount?
The recommendation is to eliminate it.
Okay.
But-
I'm sorry, I just wanted to make sure I read it correctly.
But an alternate,
I read it wrong
The
then.
board can't do
No,
it.
no, Kim, if that's the recommendation, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I read it wrong. Thank you.
but there is an alternate there, knowing that it may be a topic of discussion.
Well, I just would like to say that one of the things that we're being brought is hardly any fees being increased. So I hope any families who are listening see that there's hardly any fees going up at all, and, you know, we are not increasing anything for athletics or registration fees or band or, you know, the only small changes in a couple of course fees at the high school, which go up $5 each. So it's, thank you for that, Kim. So just so people know what it is we're talking about here.
Course fees at the junior high as well, which, you know, the unique thing about the junior high course fees is on the comparative chart. I don't see anybody else who charges course fees at the junior high level.
And we're talking about $10 and $15 proposed fees for those.
Yeah, and Dan, some of the course fees, even for the senior high level, they're, not all of that information is published. It's not all readily available when districts publish their school fees. Sometimes they'll just say, you know, as, you know, per cost, and so you don't really know what that is.
Just philosophically, I mean, the course fees strike me as odd at a public school. You know, communities have an obligation in their public schools to educate all their children. Charging people fees to go, you know, or students fees for those classes seems to fly in the face of that. As does the elimination, you know, I mean, the other thing that seems odd to me is the notion of eliminating the multiple student discount after we went through a, you know, painstaking process on the kindergarten side to find ways to defray the cost to families at certain income levels. So, you know, just philosophically, I don't understand how this works, you know, where we go through these painstaking processes to defray certain costs, but we seem, you know, cavalier with respect to so many others.
Well, when I was just thinking about what Dan just said, I think if, you know, if you compare the two, kindergarten with this, what we're doing as a district is we're offering a brand-new thing, which is all-day kindergarten. I think when a family has 3 children, they know that there's going to be costs for 3 children. Like if you go to a restaurant, you have to feed all 3 children. It is true that it is public education. This is clearly, none of these fees are anywhere near what a private education would be. But one of the things that's in this memo in front of us talks about how some of these classes have fees associated with them, like art and music. They have things that perhaps maybe some of the other classes don't have. And so if the suggestion is I personally don't see the tie-in. And when you look at what classes you have in front of us, for instance, art, to go from $15 to $20, especially in a class that I would imagine that there's more supplies in that class than another class. So I don't have any problem with this. I mean, there's, in the information that you give us in terms of across the districts, I don't see any public schools that aren't charging fees, unless I'm missing something. I don't think we're charging tuition. We're charging fees for certain things. And we're still, again, we haven't, in what's in front of us, we are not changing any fees for athletics or clubs or drama or most other things. So what's in front of us are minimal fees.
I think it's really just a visual.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at it from town to town, Lyle is charging $66 a semester for art, $66 a semester for industrial arts, $66 a semester for foods. You spread that through all the classes, it all pretty much balances out. I think it's just the way this is spread.
Right.
So I think it's all based on appearances here.
Kim, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you say that we were like one of the only districts that actually offered this multi-child discount?
Oh, no, I don't know about that. I
Okay, I
mean,
thought you had said that at one of the previous meetings, I'm sorry.
yeah, we didn't check on, necessarily on discounts for
Okay.
children.
Okay,
So, yeah.
Okay.
So Kim, we've talked over the past couple of years at registrations about it, and I know that you've been in favor of the recommendation you made. I have no problem with someone who comes in with 3 kids and is writing a huge check to the district, offering them some kind of discount.
Right.
I mean, I personally chose to have 1 child, but God bless the people that have 3 or more, and if we're giving them $25 or $35 or $50 off their couple $1,000 tuition bill,
And that's why
I just don't really have a problem
I
with that.
put that alternate in there,
Yeah.
but in the past, we've done it as a percentage. Again, it starts to become a manual calculation. There's room for error, inconsistency, and this way, if it's a flat dollar amount, it's much more manageable.
I mean, we are, unless the family qualifies for some type of reduced or waiver, we are, kind of to Dan's point about, public education, we are collecting a lot of money from families that have 3 or more kids. I mean, it's fairly sizable, particularly as those kids get older. I would personally, as I've mentioned to you in the past, I would continue to support some type of multi-child discount. I'm not particularly hung up on a percent or a fixed dollar amount, but I do think as a school district, considering what that family's potentially giving the district, both in child assets and then everything that, those kids bring to our district, to offer some kind of nominal discount, I don't think is a huge revenue question. I think it's just more a matter of a reflection of you're writing us a $2,500 check and, we want to give you a little bit back because we recognize that, you're supporting our district in a big way. I mean, when the kids get older and they're playing sports and they're doing music and we're getting recognition for those kids' successes and that type of thing, I just think it's a nice thing for larger families to be able to have that recognition.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I could definitely support a flat thing than a percentage, because that percentage, I would imagine, on every family would be a hard thing to put together, so. So what you have suggested here is a $25 discount for the 3rd and subsequent children.
Yes.
Okay, so where do we fall on that?
Fine with it.
I'm in.
Okay,
I'm in.
I could, okay.
Yeah, I personally think it should be bigger. I mean, like grades 1 through 5 registration fee is $110. So if you have 4 children, that's, just straight up, that's $440 just to walk in the door, right? $440 minus 25, clearly isn't all that much. I'd
And
like
very
to see-
quickly, a couple of those kids will be
Yeah.
junior high and then senior high, and,
Senior high goes to 190, right?
plus band and sports and choir
So
and art.
then layer on, if they start taking courses that have course fees, the numbers get huge. So for multiple kids, I would just, it's fine with a flat number. I would just make it, I would, look, like I said, we went through a painstaking process to find ways to alleviate financial burdens on families at different income levels. Families with multiple kids, particularly 3, 4, 5 kids, they've got some financial burdens. So I'd like to see, that number higher. And just for kicks and grins, we'll pick $50.
Which I still think is relatively nominal in the scheme of registering 3 or 4 kids, particularly after a year or 2 when they start entering the higher grades.
Okay, Joel, did you weigh in?
I guess I'm fine either way with this. I don't have a real strong feeling one way or another on it. I think it's kind of one of those fees that's kind of unfair in some ways. It's just kind of based on the number of kids you have and not really any other. If you have 3 kids and you make $400,000 a year, do you really need $50 off? So it's just kind of one of those things that, doesn't sit well with me. So, I'd rather see some other mechanism for that, but I'll leave that maybe for a conversation for the Finance Committee, and if the majority wants $50 off for that, I can go with that.
What level, let's go with that then, what level, if we are talking about a discount?
And again, keeping in mind, we're making the decision without having any real information about how many families and how much money, and it's still my same concern.
It says it right there.
$3,500, it's in there. Discount amount
Right.
registration amounted to $3,500.
Right, but if we're talking about a flat dollar amount, how many families is represented by $3,500?
I actually left that at the
Yeah,
office.
sorry. So I don't mean to be critical, I'm just saying, I just feels like we're at another place where we're talking about a revenue decision, and we don't actually know if we give back so much or give back so much more, and how many families.
Right. Each year.
Right, but
by
there's
the
an
plan.
average. Yeah, sure, of course it does, as kids graduate and new kids are born, right? But there's still a ballpark, there's still a projection.
Is it really a revenue decision, though, at that amount? It's really more of a goodwill gesture than anything else.
Which I think is true, but I would still reflect that it is another decision that we don't really know the revenue impact.
Okay, so if we talk about the discount then, that's where we're at. Gary, would you?
$50 is fine.
Joel?
Fine with that.
Fine with that.
I'm fine with that.
Diane, you're fine? Okay, Dan?
Yep.
And I will too. Okay, so then is there any other information on item number 2?
Given that these are unique things, can we vote the fee schedule separately, and incorporate both the fee schedule and the all-day kindergarten, where we settled on the all-day kindergarten, and just vote that separately?
Why don't we include approval of student fees with a flat amount as this, and then pull out and talk about kindergarten? We'll have a separate item as kindergarten fees with option D. So we can vote on 2 separate things.
It's fine. I'm just asking that we vote on the fees separately, whether they're both together or whether they're both separately.
Okay.
I'm just asking that we vote on
Let
the
me
fees
run
separately.
this by and see what you think. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended. Number 1, personnel recommendations. Number 2, approval of 2013 and 2014 student fees, not including kindergarten, but also including $50 discount for the families. Okay? So we're not talking kindergarten. Number 3, approval of ombudsman contract. Number 4, appointment of DAOES representative. So what that does is we're not talking about kindergarten, but we are amending the fees to have that $50. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Well, yeah, I think, but on a perfunctory basis, we can all probably approve 1, 3, and 4, right? But on the fees, I'd like to vote that. I'm asking as a member at the table to pull that matter and vote on it separately.
I think Dan is asking for
Pull number 2
the
completely.
consent agenda to be 1, 3, and 4, and then approval of the
so you wanna-
2013-14 student fees as amended.
Okay, so you don't want to vote on the fees?
Separate, just vote it separately.
Okay.
Separate.
Okay, fine. Then let's try that again. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented for items number 1, personnel recommendations, number 3, approval of ombudsman contract, and 4, appointment of DAOES representative.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Charleston?
Yes.
Ms. Caparelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Hancock?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes. Okay, now, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the portion of the consent agenda with the approval of the 2013-2014 student fees in regards to kindergarten with option D as discussed at this meeting, and an amended that the discount will be $50. There's the motion.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please, Mrs. McMahon.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Charleston?
No.
Ms. Caparelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Hancock?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes. So that passes. Okay, so Kim, you have everything that's all?
Yes.
So Marie, I just wanted to say, related to the fees, I just wanted to say out loud, I was really pleased when we got the fee schedule and there wasn't a whole list of increases. I think in years past, we've had a lot of discussion about the public education thing, and I just wanted to say thank you. That, you know, I was just relieved, even to a certain extent, to see that come through that way. So thank you very much.
We understand the tough economic times and.
Thank you.
Okay, information, we'll start with dual language program and Ms. Kelly Bass.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Kelly Bass. I'm the principal at Miller. Another hat I also wear in the district is I'm a bilingual ESL coordinator. This is Nancy Nanalig. She is the Miller ESL bilingual teacher, and we're here to just share some information about dual language. If you recall, part of Kevin's presentation with Small Giants is to look at innovative teaching and look at different programming that we can offer, and so one of the things that we looked at was dual language. So last year, Kevin, myself, and Nancy, we were involved in a year-long workshop through the Illinois Resource Center, where we got a lot of information about dual language, and we're here to share that information with you, as well as talk about the information that we came to with our committee that we had put together. So, the space bar, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So why this came about? So first of all, part of what we do every year is that we have an ESL bilingual program that is mandated by the federal government. We have a grant that we fill out. It's the Transitional Bilingual Grant, as well as the TPI grant, which is the Transitional Program of Instruction, which is the ESL grant. This grant provides funds for our ESL bilingual program, and the state suggested that for us to continue to receive this federal funding, we were required to offer an improved program for our Spanish-speaking students because of the quantity that we have. So one of the things that we did with Nancy over at Miller is that we implemented a literacy block model at Miller School for our Spanish-speaking students that qualify for the program. As we did this, we really went in depth and looked for what is the best programming out there for ELL students, and the Cadillac program is a dual language program, and that was one of the reasons why we decided to go ahead and investigate that some more. We were audited by ISB, the Illinois State Board of Education, at the end of February for our program. They came in and went to all of the different buildings, sat down with the administrators and the teachers, and just kind of checked up with us with our program to make sure that we were following the guidelines that are set for us to do that. They informally had an exit interview with Kevin and I, and during this interview, they thought that the implementation of a dual language program was a great way to look at meeting the needs of our second language students, as well as giving our monolingual students a new opportunity to become bilingual. So they were really excited about that. So to talk about what a dual language program is. A dual language program is a bilingual education program. It integrates English language learners, which are ESL students, and English speaking students. And it integrates them for instruction in and through two languages. And we would have an English and a Spanish program, since the majority of our ESL students are Spanish speakers. The purpose of a dual language program is to have everyone biliterate. Biliterate means that you would be able to speak, read, and write in both languages fluently by the end of 5th grade. A dual language classroom is generally half filled with ELL students and half with English speaking students or non-ELL students. Dual language programs, there's many names for them. They're also called two-way immersion programs, two-way bilingual programs, bilingual immersion, or dual language immersion. Talking about instruction with this program, we would begin with kindergarten. Kindergarten students would spend 80% of their day receiving instruction in Spanish and 20% of their day with instruction in English. We would offer, one of the things we talked about in our program is we would talk about a simultaneous model of instruction where the literacy block would be taught twice. We would do one of those blocks in English and one of them in Spanish. The goal of the program is to have all of our students fully biliterate, and we want them to read, write, and speak fluently in both English and Spanish by the time they graduate 5th grade. The dual language program is a commitment for our families and our parents. It's a commitment from kindergarten through 5th grade, with the opportunity to look at continuing with programming once students move on to the junior high. Through our committee, we came up with a name for the program, and that was the Westmont Language Academy. And our committee went through and discussed the following items. We want our program to be a magnet program. We want it open to all kindergarten students within Community Unit School District 201, and we want to name it the Westmont Language Academy. A magnet school or a magnet program is a public school that offers a specialized course or courses that allow all students across the district to participate regardless of where the normal school boundaries lie. We would have our dual language classes at Miller. Busing would then be provided for those who require it by law. And then we would like to market this as an elite program for our community. Talking about how we would have our students enter the program. The first question that we need to take a look at is why would we start with kindergarten? So part of when we look at ESL and bilingual students, we know that it's been shown that it takes 5 to 6 years to become fully proficient in 2 languages, and we're not just talking about speaking, we're talking about the academic pieces of language. So we are starting with kindergarten. Like we had said, that it takes 5 to 6 years to become fully proficient in 2 languages. How are we going to choose our students for this program? Non-ELL students. Those students that are interested in being a part of the program would apply. If there are a lot of non-ELL students that are interested, we would have a lottery, and we would use that to fill the spots and have a waiting list. Spanish-speaking students who qualify for ELL services will participate in the dual language program. We have very set guidelines set up by the state and the federal government on how we go about that to have our students in the ESL program. So we would follow those same guidelines and offer that to our Spanish-speaking kindergarten students. After we look at having our program and setting it up, those students that are non-ELL students or English-speaking students, once they move on, we would definitely look at that family and giving them priority. So siblings of non-ELL students would get priority in entering the program in the years as the program moves on. Our older ELL students, since we're just focusing on kindergarten, they would continue with the same program that they currently have in the district. Looking at additional costs. Transportation, as I was talking with Kevin, we're looking at the transportation for this, and we looked at when we had the option for Manning students to come to Miller. And so the transportation costs, since students from across the district would be able to participate, the cost would be estimated to be around $20,000 for the transportation. There would definitely be a cost for materials in Spanish and in English for the program. And every year we would add a grade. So we would begin with kindergarten this year, and we're looking at that cost to be estimated around $3,000. And then once we begin with kindergarten, those kids would move on to 1st grade, and then we would have a kindergarten and 1st grade, and that would just continue up to 5th grade. This will be one of the 4 all-day kindergarten teachers for the 2013-2014 school year. So we were looking at 4 sections of all-day kindergarten, 2 at Manning and 2 at Miller. This would be one of those sections. And then with anything, especially with something like this, we would have to have professional development. And so the Illinois Resource Center, they provide professional development for this. It's a 5-day workshop, and it's $1,700. So as we went through this, we went and picked out the things that we thought were really pertinent and we wanted to talk about again. So talking about frequently asked questions. Is there a tuition fee? Tuition for full-day kindergarten will apply to traditional and dual language programs. So it's $2,000 for the 2013-2014 school year. Will transportation be provided? Yes, transportation will be provided as required by the state. Where will the program be housed? All district students who participate in this program will attend at Miller School. Who qualifies for the program? All ELL students who qualify for services would qualify for this program. And then non-ELL students based on interest. Like we had talked about before, the high interest could result in a lottery or a waiting list. When will information be available to parents? We would definitely hold an informational meeting for incoming kindergarten families after our kindergarten registration is over, and that's going on this week. Can a student be added to or removed from the dual language program? Dual language is a 6-year commitment. Once a student begins in a dual language program, it takes 5 to 6 years to develop language proficiency in both languages. And then we're here for any questions if you guys have any questions.
I had a couple of general ones, I guess.
Sure.
You stated that the state was mandating this change, or we're going to lose money, grant money? Is that?
We have part of our TBE TPI grant is it's not a big grant. It's based on how many kids we have in the program, and so we have about 98 kids across the district in the program, and then it's based on how many minutes they get. So it's not a huge amount of money, and what the money that we do have is used to pay partial salary.
Okay,
for a
and
teacher.
if we didn't make the change, which I'm off, I like the program, I'm just wondering,
Yep.
if we didn't make the change, I guess, let me rephrase it this way, when would we need to start to prevent the state from saying we're not doing it right or taking money from us? Would it have to be this fall?
Okay, so what ended up happening is at the end of the school year last year, they contacted me and they asked that we talked about the program. And so basically our ESL bilingual program was a very short pull-out period. It was about 30 minutes a day, and then we only offer the one class at the junior high and the one class at the high school. So because of the quantity of kids that we have at Miller, we have about 37 students that are in the ESL bilingual program. Does that sound right? About 37% or 37 students, and the majority of those kids speak Spanish. When you have 20 or more students that speak one language, you have to offer some kind of a different program. It's got to be a bilingual program. So we offered a bilingual program, but it was a small pull-out program for 30 minutes, and that's what they didn't want.
That's what they didn't want, okay.
So we did implement something different this year. We're doing a literacy block program with kids that qualify. But again, it's not the Cadillac program. It's just kind
Not
of,
doing enough, right.
it's a good program, but it could definitely be better. So we went and investigated and then came up with the dual language piece.
Okay. You also say it's a commitment K through 5. What if somebody's in 3rd grade and they just realize, no, this isn't for me, I'm just struggling too much? Can they leave the program?
Well, they can. We would sit down and talk and try to talk them out of it.
Okay.
Because when you start to learn a language, you're not going to learn it in 1 year or 2 years or 3 years.
Right.
It's a long commitment, and it takes a long time. And it's the whole biliterate piece. It's just not being able to speak another language. It's also the whole academic, the reading, the writing, all of that. So it's a commitment to be biliterate.
Okay.
Has word filtered out to parents to a certain extent, and have parents said, I would like my kid to participate in this?
Within the committee, we did have some parents in the committee, and they were very positive about it. And part of what dual language is, when you look across DuPage County or any county, the closest program to us is in Naperville District 203. They have a dual language program, and they have huge people that are waiting to get into that program. They have just a huge amount of people that want to get into that program. So that's part of why we looked at innovative teaching and innovative programming. This is an innovative programming. There are people that I'm a parent, and I would definitely look for a dual language program for my kids. But within DuPage County, there aren't any. But that's part of when we went through the training, that there are people that choose to move into a community or a district because they want to be a part of a program like this.
So how are you going to contact the parents of the incoming kindergartners?
So what we would do, we're going to take a look at what we get for kindergarten registration, and then we would hold a meeting. And that's how we're going to do it. We're just going to take a look at who registers and do it that way. We also, once registration is done over the summer, take a look at maybe having a meeting in the summer as well.
Unfortunately, I know a parent that's waiting on whether we're going to have the dual language program to sign up for kindergarten or not. So.
Well, I think the message that we can send is that, we haven't decided if we're going to have it. You guys get to decide that. But we can send them the message that that's definitely something that we're thinking about doing. And once we make that decision, they can still register for kindergarten. And then once we have the meeting, they could, definitely sign up for it.
Or they can always register and then, we have families register every year and then their situation changes, they move or something, and they don't end up attending.
And this is only one person, but she specifically said that, she would really only contemplate all-day kindergarten if we had a dual program. So.
Well, and to piggyback on that, I've heard from some parents who are saying that the word is spreading and outside of 201, and that there are some families who would consider moving into District 201 for a dual language program. So, I like to hear that because I think that goes along with the small giant, how we can be different from most districts. But I also like this program quite a bit because it also addresses the needs of our students that are here. And that is just something that is, very imperative. And I know I strongly support this program, and I thank you for bringing this to us. So, thank you.
Kelly, we already have an idea of how many ELL kindergartners there may be next year, roughly?
I think roughly, we haven't had, right at this point Tuesday, we haven't had a lot of students register, but I'm not 100% positive. I think there's maybe about 14 students over at preschool, more or less.
Those are the ones we know about right now. So we're looking at 14 plus whoever else crawls out of the woodwork during the registration process. Right?
And some of those students might not be coming to kindergarten, but they might be like a year younger. But there's at least 10.
Okay.
We would still have to screen them also and see where
they
how
qualify.
proficient they are in English. Yeah.
Okay.
So not necessarily because they speak Spanish would they qualify.
Okay.
So you guys designed, you guys did all this program design or all this work on your own, as it were?
No, we had a committee, and so we sat down with the committee. I guess part of her experience. I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, did you model it after something though?
Okay, so part of my experience and Nancy's experience is with bilingual education, and so I think over probably within the past 20 years, if you can believe that, there's been a huge change in the students that we get. We used to get students who only spoke Spanish, and now we get students who speak a mixture of both English and Spanish. And so having a traditional bilingual program is difficult because those students know things in English and they know things in Spanish, and so it's kind of hard to figure out what's the best model and the best way to teach them. And so this takes care of that problem because you're doing it in both. And so whatever they don't have in one language, they end up getting in one language. What they don't have in the other language, they end up getting it. And so it's just a better model for those students because it fills in the gaps that they have in both languages.
And using the resources that they have in both Spanish and English.
Just as a side note, I'm familiar with the work of the Latino Policy Forum here in Chicago. Including some work that they're doing with CPS, in terms of setting up, dual language as well as, sort of this multicultural environment type work. So the program design stuff can get really robust. It just is a fascinating sort of space. I think the exciting thing for me, just in terms of what we can do with it in this district, is it clearly is an attraction to non-ELLs, and I'd look forward to seeing a fairly robust response to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then, just as a follow-up at our next board meeting then, the dual language program would be for formal board action, and that's essentially when the board would have the opportunity to approve it. So if there are any questions between now and then, please contact me, and then, I can sit down with Kelly and Nancy, and we can get those answers for you.
That's the May meeting we're talking about?
No, the 30th.
All right. The next item on the agenda, Early Childhood Center renovations. Mr. Cashman here.
Marie, Kevin, just before Steve starts, my same comment would be about the dual languages, getting some of those numbers a little more blocked out so we can see cost and revenue, specifically versus, this is more of a presentation format, but for our purpose, when we actually want to vote on it, I think it would be good to see those in a little more structured sort of, cost and that type of thing, okay?
Thank you, Steve. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Forget your password, Steve?
Or I can't see.
Kelly, can you give me
Oh,
a
I can
glass?
see it.
Want some readers?
He just said he can't see.
Kelly should have
So
left her
it's
eyeballs
Kelly.
up there
You
for you,
should've.
I guess.
Yeah. Mara's got some cheaters.
No, I see what I did. Oh, I have cheaters, thank you.
Thank you.
There we go.
Okay, thank you. I want to just give you an update on what we are currently out to bid to construct, and this is basically to renovate the north half of South School for an expanded early childhood program. And I'll kind of go through this in these drawings that I have, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions. We basically, this is looked at over 2 years ago when we first thought about this and came up with the idea. We did the renovations last summer and then anticipated this work, and then we've been working since the fall with Linda and her staff and the administration on coming up with an approach that makes sense, an approach that is affordable. So what we're doing here, I'll jump to the second page so you can see the existing layout. Basically, right now, it's pretty much the way the school was when it was closed. The existing kindergarten room exists in the original footprint, and then there were basically 4 classrooms on the north face of that level that were standard classrooms, then basically a gymnasium and a core area. This last year, we used just the kindergarten room, which is on the lower left, and the northwest classroom, which is an 800 square foot classroom, as a temporary early childhood program. And that was helpful because the rooms are different in size, and when we really talked with the staff, you have currently 5 classrooms here, but 1 that is basically over 1,000 square feet, and then 4 that are more elementary school classrooms. So one of our early questions was how many classrooms and what's the appropriate size? So Linda and her staff really thought about this and looked at what they could do in different size spaces, and having these 2 and using them this last year was helpful because they were able to compare what they could do in the 1,000 square foot plus and in the 800 square foot classroom. In the end, the decision was that the 800 square foot classroom was just too limiting, even with just 10 students. That with the way they use the rooms, the way they landscape with furniture, and the type of program they offer, there's just not enough room there for the teachers to really deliver what they wanted to. So we looked at different options. One thing that's unique about South School is all of the interior walls are load-bearing walls. Most of your other buildings, walls between classrooms, we can knock down and move. These actually are supporting the roof structure. And the corridor wall is also constructed in an interesting way, too, where the lockers are actually tied in with the clear story glazing and are supporting that glazing. So that kind of limited some of the things we could do, and also in trying to keep this as an affordable project. So we looked at different options and basically came up with this design where we basically, if you kind of consider the L of the classrooms, we looked at creating 3 appropriately sized classrooms with then support space for staff and for therapists to support the program, and then created a 4th classroom by taking the existing gymnasium and creating an appropriate sized classroom on the southeast corner of that wing on the east side of the gymnasium, and then we end up with a nice size gross motor room that is using basically a little less than, or a little more than half of the current gymnasium. In our current project, we actually issued documents yesterday for go out to bid. The bid opening is on May 3rd. We are looking at it in a base bid with then 6 additive alternates to give you as much flexibility as possible on where those numbers come in and how much you want to go after in year 1. We also thought it may be possible that you just do the L, basically create those 3 classrooms in year 1, then you know the cost to construct the classroom 4 and the gross motor space for year 2, and then you could do it, say, a year from now. So that's one of the major alternate bids, is to add that 4th classroom. One thing that's unique about these rooms and dealing with the staff for them this last year, a typical classroom, they'd have a teacher and 2 aides. If a student needs to go to the bathroom and they go out to the bathrooms in the hall, 2 teachers go with that student. So it's really disruptive to the program. So one of the most critical elements in creating a good early childhood classroom is having a restroom within the room that it can be supervised and that the teachers don't have to leave the room. So we've constructed, even though there's a small, very tiny current restroom in the kindergarten room, the existing kindergarten room, we're demolishing that and creating an appropriate sized room for not only, there's a toilet, a sink, there's also then a changing table with a sink with steps so that they can get a child up there and do a diaper change. And then outside of that room, there's also a crescent-shaped wash station where 3 students can use that, the staff member can use that, and the restroom walls are just 4 feet high. So they don't have the issue with a child unattended and in a room that's enclosed. They have some privacy, but it's open to the classroom. And I'll show you later what that kind of appears. But those are basically the pink spaces that are in the corners of the rooms. We then, to create 3 rooms or 4 rooms that are appropriately sized. We basically opened up the masonry wall by installing a large steel beam within the wall to support the roof structure, and we were able to create basically an alcove off of that room. So the room that Doris was using this last year, that's just 800 square feet, is now over 1,000 square feet, is more akin to the original kindergarten room, and then it also has its own bathroom within that room. And that is basically up in this corner, in the northwest corner of the space. We then basically created 3 offices and a library conference room suite in the middle, and that's for support staff and for therapists to come in and to do services for the students. And then basically classroom 3, again, has an alcove and a restroom. Yeah, let's see, I'll go to... This is a view of the space from the southwest. If seeing it in 3D is a little easier for you, and I have a close-up view that I'll focus on. This is the same a view from the northeast. So you can see the original kindergarten room, the new classroom 2 with this alcove and the restroom, the 3 offices and the conference room, and then classroom 3 with this alcove and the restroom, and then this is the new classroom 4, which will be part of the alternate bid. This view here, I think, is easiest to see, and I'll kind of zoom in first on this classroom so you can see it more closely. So this area over here, this is basically the original classroom size, 800 square feet. This opening is as large as we could make it structurally without having to install new foundations. So it's basically a 12-foot wide by 8-foot high masonry opening. And then, so this alcove is really, part of the space. And I would think, like what we did this last year at the Miller Library, where we took those 2 spaces and we opened them up and created a reading alcove. It would be a space similar to that, where it's part of the room, but it's going to have its own little area. And if you see how the staff really use these early childhood rooms, they landscape and create all these different activity areas within the room. So it really, I think, will work well towards that, because they don't really want a big open room. They really create these smaller areas for the students. From this view, you can see the restroom where, one wall, so there's some sense of privacy because there's one wall that's full, but then this wall here is 4 feet high. This is the changing table unit that has a sink. These are pull-out stairs so they can be pushed back in, and then have all the changing supplies below, a juvenile-sized lavatory and a toilet, and then there's a ceramic tile surround. And then on the opposite side of this wall is this crescent-shaped wash station that's down 24 inches off the floor, so it's at preschool height, and it's hands-free. It's a large open space so that they can use it, whether they're using it for cleanup activities, just washing their hands when they come at the start of the day, leaving the day, lunch. It'll give them lots of flexibility, and it's also a big enough bowl that the teacher's going to be able to use it for other kind of classroom functions, cleaning, art supplies, that kind of thing. If I move a little bit here to the side, this is that kind of core space, and this is concept F. We looked at a number of different designs with Linda and her staff and with the administration, and this was really, it was kind of interesting how it evolved as we looked at it, because early on we did have 5 classrooms, and then the more we really thought about it, it just didn't seem like it would be better to build 4 proper classrooms than have 5 with some that are undersized. And then the idea of having the support space, which is so crucial to really having a good early childhood program, and the idea of this being in the middle of the early childhood center was kind of exciting to the staff. So this conference room / library is really a multi-purpose type space. It's basically about half a classroom in size, and it will allow all kinds of activities, but whether they're doing staffings or other functions, for staff, but then just even for students, it's going to be a great space. And then we basically have 3 smaller offices here with a lot of glass to basically allow them to do have support services for the students and bring in therapists from the other schools in the district. And with that, so back to kind of the schedule. We started this in the fall. We just issued bid documents on Monday. We're having a pre-bid meeting with contractors tomorrow afternoon. There's a pre-qualification requirement that's being submitted a week from next week, and then the bid opening is on May 3rd, and then we'll be coming, I believe, on the 14th of May. That would be the board meeting where our intention is to come with a recommendation to award a contract. And back to the kind of way we structured this to give you flexibility. So we have the base bid, which is basically going and constructing the L of those classrooms. So it would really be classroom 1, 2, this core space, and 3. So that's the base bid. Add alternate 1 is going to be basically the work in the gymnasium area. And just a sense of scale, we worked with a general contractor on doing a cost estimate, and this could be in the magnitude of a $300,000 add. So that's where we really wanted to see where this is at. There's also an abatement project for removing some of the original classroom tile that's going on separately from this project and will be coordinated as far as schedule. The core area we're leaving fairly alone, but a couple important things we're doing for security. Right now it's the way it was back when it was closed, where you come in the front doors and then you pretty much have the run of the school. We're changing that and basically constructing, and I'll zoom in on it a little bit here, and I'll show it to you in 3D. We're basically creating a barrier here, which is a glass wall with a door and a card reader. And then we're changing a couple other lock sets. So once they come into the building, they really can't get back into the classroom areas without a staff member letting them in or having card access. So we really wanted to create a vestibule and make it secure so that if they're waiting, they're coming in, they can wait in that area, but they cannot get back further in. And we actually toured as a design team. We went to 3 different early childhood centers in the Naperville, Aurora areas, and it was interesting. That was kind of an emerging feature that people have added, to have the secure area where you have the front kind of reception area, and then you really separate the classrooms. So that's part of the base bid. We also, when we did an analysis of the building, there's some glazing in the entrance doors, side lights, both at the main entrance on the west, the exit on the northeast, and the exit on the east, where just over time there's some wire glass, there's some glass that could be plate glass, there's some plexiglass, it's quite a mix. We're doing an alternate bid to basically reglaze those doors so that they'll all have a safety-rated wire glass, which makes it a much more secure building. It would stop forced entry and just create a more secure perimeter. So that's another add alternate. We're doing some work for Linda and Nancy, are basically going to have office areas up the 5 steps up to the main administration area, the old principal's office. The principal's office itself would be Linda's office, and then the kind of conference meeting space is going to become Nancy's office. We're doing some modifications to the glazing to provide her privacy. And then there's the old nurse's office area and a couple storage rooms that will be for their files. So it really worked out. We did a lot of comparisons, and it's basically duplicates the space they have currently over at the junior high. Another add alternate and is basically constructing, replacing the old entry doors that face the west. They're non-thermally broken, steel sash. They've kind of outlived their life, but it's an expensive proposition to replace them. We're looking at an alternate bid to basically replace those with new aluminum frames and glazing, and creating a vestibule so that it would not only be secure, but actually be more energy efficient. In new building design, you can't have an entry like that just comes right into a building. There needs to be some kind of airlock vestibule. So that's another alternate.
Which doors did you say those were, Steve?
The west entrance, the main entrance.
Okay.
Related to the main entrance, the sidewalks outside there are in pretty poor shape, so we're basically replacing all the concrete pavement from the doors out to the public sidewalk. It's been on Mike's to-do list as long as I've been working with you, and we're getting at that. And then we also have some unit prices on concrete, on carpet, resilient tile, other materials, because there's some other repairs that Mike knows he wants to do around the district with some other pavement. So we'll have the dollar amounts, and if the budget allows, we'll be able to do some additional repairs. So, and then a fourth, or one of the other alternate bids is actually in this lobby area. This was lower down on the priority list, but was basically taking a portion of this circulation space here that goes out to this east entry door and creating another office space there. When we really were trying to prioritize, this was lower to the bottom, but we can do it as an alternate bid so we know what the cost is. If the budget allowed, you would have the option of accepting that. So that is an overview of the project, and be happy to answer any questions or explain it in better detail.
There's 5 add alternates, is that right?
There's actually 6 add alternates.
So you've got the gym in the classroom.
Gym in the classroom.
Reglazing all the doors.
Reglazing doors. There's the privacy glazing for Nancy's office is a third. Constructing the office area Here is another.
The exit doors at the west and the concrete at the front of the
Correct.
building. Thanks.
Steve?
Yes, ma'am.
When you look at this, what you have here, could this be done over the summer?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So
I mean,
if
It has to be.
all lines up,
It's a very manageable project. We've contacted over a dozen contractors that we've worked with. This is a popular size project, and it's definitely doable. It's mostly interior work. We pre-ordered some small univents so that we didn't have an issue with lead time there. So it's definitely a doable project. That was one of our early questions with Kim and Kevin were, can this be done? It's a little more challenging because the original scope of the abatement we thought could be done in a week, and it's going to take a little longer than that. But we're going in starting on June 5th. There's a few days where Mike and the general contractor will go, and Mike will be removing furniture from the classrooms and storing that. And then a general contractor will go in and pull the univentilators from the perimeter wall, the metal casework from the perimeter wall, so that when the abatement starts, we kind of expose the patient, open it up, so we make sure there's no hidden tile that we are not able to get out during this project. So, and then basically on the 24th of June is when the general contractor starts in full. And then it completes the second week of August.
so in case anyone is listening, this is a continuation of the projects that we went out for bond money for. So this is the next step, and we're hoping everything lines up so that we...
Right. And that's why we really wanted to do a base bid with the 6 add alternates, is just to give you flexibility, because then you can see exactly where they're at.
Well, and also because we didn't get the early childhood grant
Correct.
we're hoping for,
Right,
so we've
right,
got some
right. But I just want to make sure that if anyone
unavailable.
hasn't, because this has been, like, we've been talking about this for a couple of years, so.
When we were considering the grant, we were looking at more extensive renovation. We would be taking all the corridor lockers out. I mean, we know we could do it in the future, but that's an expensive proposition. And when we talked about it with, Linda and her staff about what do we really gain, the focus was really on the classroom space and working out from there. There was a lot of talk about the bathrooms and, where do those fit in their importance. And from the teacher's point of view and from the day in the life of an early child classroom, they were very important. So that, became a high priority and became part of the base. So that's where it was a nice kind of a design dialogue coming up with what we hope it will be an affordable approach. Whether you just do the L and you don't accept alternate 1 in this year, you'll know what it costs, and you could easily do that as a summer project a year later. And I also think you're going to be growing this program. Right now you just have 2 classrooms, so are you going to go from 2 to 4? You could go from 2 to 3 to 4. That could be an option. So,
Question, because you answered something so if you look at the existing doors when you walk
Right.
in, okay? And so if we look, and then there's that security door, is there anything, like, am I reading this correctly? If I look at this gross motor space.
Correct.
Is that a door into that room there?
Well, first of all, if you look at this view, this is looking now from the southwest, from like the corner of Dallas and Grant. So this is these are the west doors, the main entrance doors. This here is a new set of doors and the glass that we're going to construct, which basically creates a secure reception area. This current bathroom then becomes a unisex bathroom for someone that's waiting with a child.
Keep going down, like if I walk in the door and I just keep going straight.
Okay.
No, go back.
No.
Go back.
you
We're
wanna go this
talking
way.
about into
By
the
the
gym.
kitchen
Yeah.
and
Into the gym, right in there.
Are those
right?
windows there? So people...
In base bid, these doors stay.
Okay.
The doors to the gymnasium currently cannot be secured from the vestibule, and actually the doors are in bad shape. We're keeping the frame, we're replacing the doors and putting in lock sets there so that you cannot get into the gym
Okay.
from the vestibule.
That's what I was...
And then in the for the warming kitchen, we're replacing the lock set so that you can't get in there also. So
Okay.
the only direction you could really go is up to the administrative wing.
Okay, so that's what I was asking, just because as I'm looking at this, trying to see if that's but it's a door.
Yeah, no, we wanted to make sure that we really had the separate staff area.
Okay.
And there's going to be traffic. They're using, basically, you can see a corner of it here. This is the workroom that we constructed this last summer, and that was designed for and located for use by both the administration and by the early childhood program. So it's proximity, and then basically right here in the corner, this would be basically where Linda and Nancy are going to be right at the top of those stairs.
So then and that's wonderful, that's security there. So what happens when a parent comes to the school? I mean, where you're talking about where the district office entrance is. Is that where a parent would be coming in, or how do they?
This is something, maybe I'll let Kim and Kevin talk about this, because it's something we talked about a lot, and with them being in the building now for this year, the day and how we should manage this kind of come up. So I don't know if you wanted to answer that, Kim, but the idea was really using the Dallas Street entrance as the main secure entrance, because the district office is right there. At the start and end of the school day, this will obviously be used, but if someone comes during the day, they'll come around to Dallas. They won't come in through Grant.
Okay, because that just leads me to the question of signage.
Well, signage,
I know in this year it's been, just because people don't know where to go. So that would be something you would include?
We have signage in this bid package to address that, because, one issue is, we need to have directional signage. So we have normal room signage that's required by code, but we also have directional signs so that we can figure out what the best solution is, and connecting the airphone, the intercom that's there rings up to the administrative office. But we're going to have to deal with it. We looked at initially when we started and we thought about having this grant, we were looking at this being really a true reception area with a staff member there, but that's now more expensive.
Right.
Because really, if you look at all the places we toured, they literally have a reception area with someone who's full-time there, just greeting people, people coming in during the day for special services. So this is really, we see as a first step. That's why we actually wanted to do that office as an ad alternate, because at least we'd know, okay, say you want to do that now 3 years from now, because this program's so robust, you could then know approximately what it's going to cost and do it at that time.
Okay, good, thank you.
Steve, if I can go back to this security door in the hallway for a second here.
Sure.
I can see on the one plan that hallway's like 8 feet, 10 inches across, somewhere right in there. Wouldn't we feel more comfortable with a set of double doors there in the event of emergency instead of a single door?
By code, you only need the single door. It's just more restrictive. You would rarely use that door. It's pairs of doors.
I agree. I'm just, as I sit here and I look at this and I think if we did have to exit from that end of the building quickly, trying to get whatever amount of students and whatever their needs might be.
It's a fairly small student population, much smaller than when it was in elementary school.
Okay, to me, that looks like a nervous point to me.
Yeah. I mean, it's something we could consider further. It's kind of Grand Central Station for this one reason. This is where the drinking fountains are. So
it would still be a security door. I'm not saying not to make it a security door, okay, with a card swipe. I just think we, I personally would feel better and more comfortable if that was a double door and both doors could swing out, so that if we had to get out of that building quickly and whatever that child's need might be, it would be easy to get them out that.
We certainly could consider that. Because we basically would do the card reader just on one door, and the other one would just be exit only.
Right. But when you wanted to, or if you needed to, you could swing open that other door. Okay.
So is everyone in agreement with the gymnasium? Because I know when the team was here 2 months ago, they really liked that gym.
Well, that was in the design process. That was kind of an interesting part, because they really do like it, the size it currently is. But we were trying to create space within existing. So that's where, I think it really be interesting to see what is the base bid, what is that alternate one, and what do you want to do in this first year? I mean, you could choose that, just to decide that let's have the 3 rooms in year 1 and then see how that goes. I mean, because they are going to have to live in a smaller footprint.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
So is programming going to be dependent on whether we do 3 or 4 classrooms? Or are we going to build a 4th classroom if we decide to go that route and it's going to sit empty? In other words, will we be serving more students if we have the classroom space?
Right. Well, if you have the classroom space, then definitely you have the ability to service more students. But some of that, obviously is driven by the bid and
what we can afford.
So what we have now, though, we just have the 2 rooms.
Correct.
So if it came to, like,
The base bid, you're still
3 room,
expanding, right.
We're still expanding, which is what we're hoping to do
Right.
with our program, right? Okay.
And even your second classroom is 50% larger than what you currently have, and will have a bathroom in it. I mean, it's really, Doris is, it's been an interesting year. A lot of, children going over to the bathrooms, because I'm sure they get, 2 teachers go, they take a child there, and as soon as they come back, someone else raises their hand, and it's got to be challenging. It's not ideal. So this will really be helpful. Actually, they can show you maybe a better view here. So here you can see this would be like Doris's restroom. So this is the existing wall, which is the east wall of her room. There's casework along here. This is one of the crescent-shaped, hands-free sinks. And then here's this partial height wall, the changing area, the lavatory and the toilet. And, so having that right there, there's some privacy, but it's safe and it meets their requirements as far as, one staff member, they can get a few kids moving through there. All the facilities we saw did not have enclosed restrooms. They were all low-height walls.
Yes?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
One thing I'm noticing, and we've been able to give a lot of input, and we really appreciate that a lot of our concerns have been met. One thing I didn't notice before is I'm noticing with the classrooms in the L, and there's that wall, small wall there. Is it possible that could have glass in that wall so that you don't have a corner that a child could be out of sight from a classroom teacher? Or does that change a lot of things?
Say like this wall.
Classroom 2, there's that little, right?
Like this wall here?
It's the little wall that...
Opposite the water? Opposite the water? There's a little half moon?
There's water on one side, but on the other side, it looks like there's a corner where they go into that little alcove and be unseen. So is there a way that alcove wall can have
this wall.
glass in
Yep.
it?
That's as wide as we could do it structurally.
But could this wall right here, could that be like a see-through wall so that if the child's over on this side and the teacher is over here and the other aide's in the bathroom, you can see everything that's going on like in this corner?
I'll have to see. We literally have to tear down and rebuild 32 inches of that wall just to support the load. So basically, this whole piece here is solid concrete. I don't think we're going to be able to do that. It was challenging. Basically, there's not foundations. There's thickened slabs underneath these spans. So our challenge was to make it as open as possible. When we started with our structural engineer, this wall was more open. But by the time we got down to what is really possible, because we're basically picking up the entire load of that roof, a span from half this classroom over to this wall here. And we initially thought we were only going to be rebuilding 16 inches on each end of this opening, so basically one width of block here and here. And when they calculate the loads, we have to basically rebuild 32 inches on each side. And it will be fully grouted with rebar, so I can't get you a window in there, fortunately. Right. It's challenging. Trying to just make it as open as we can, but.
And I can't remember if it was an earlier version of this plan or maybe another one that we were looking at one point, but I don't notice any specific pull-out space. Do early childhood students have a lot of pull-out time, and where would they go for any kind of individual services?
That would really be the blue area.
The offices are for?
Correct.
Okay.
Both for pull-out and then for special service parents
Special
coming
services?
in with special services. Yeah.
Okay.
Plus, that's why we'd ask for that multi-purpose conference room library, because small groups can go in there for story time and things like that instead of being on the edge of the hallway.
Okay.
We are challenged. I think we had 12 pounds in a 10-pound bag, maybe 8-pound bag, trying to get this all in here. Storage is going to be a challenge. We're just really trying to work within what we have as space and keep it affordable. So It really was, I think I've told you before, architecture is the art of compromise. We've had plenty of compromises on this design, but, I think we really tried to focus on what are the most important things. I know, even on flooring, there's been so many discussions about carpet versus tile, and we have a base bid of solid vinyl tile, which is a real benefit. We've talked about this a lot with Mike, because these rooms have a lot of equipment and furniture in them. So this isn't like, to strip and wax a floor. You're not taking 24 tablet armchairs out. This is a lot of equipment, and getting it back in the same spot is a real challenge for Mike. So we're going with a solid vinyl flooring that doesn't need any wax. So it can just be wet mopped. But then as, like the teachers actually didn't realize we were going to give them carpet over the full room this last year, but we did that because it was, it's older vinyl asbestos tile, and we just felt better having the carpet tile down. They had actually, being there for a year, kind of liked it. So we have a unit price for carpet tile, and then once we get the bids open, we can really look at each room and see, will it be all resilient tile? Will it be some section that might be carpet tile and the rest resilient tile? We'll have the numbers to make those adjustments. Because each room's a little different. I mean, with Rosemarie's room, where she was this year, where this is a large open space, Doris's room really has like this alcove. So, would the alcove be carpet and the rest of the room be tile, or vice versa? Really will take some thought. And then really looking at how they want to furnish the rooms. This room was really challenged on how they could furnish it because it's just smaller than it really needs to be. And I think it was probably hard this year to really lay it out. I don't think it was set up ideally this year. Rosemarie's room was much better because it's, it was 1,000 square feet of space.
Steve, what about the dungeon in that building, the downstairs that
we renovated?
Yeah, I mean, I just thought, because you just made the comment that storage is a challenge.
Well, the basement level, has been completely renovated, so it's a large, what was the multi-purpose/art space is renovated. There's a technology in it. I know that the early childhood program was using it for
storage.
We've been able to go down there a lot during the winter, and the kids can play wonderful games with the open space.
Yeah.
We do definitely need storage, but that has been great to use as temporary space too.
Okay.
And I think when, as this program grows, I think using that space makes a lot of sense, and what kind of activities would happen there. I mean, it was used very extensively by the school as a educational space. So I don't know how extensively it's been used with the administration being in the last 6 months. But, I mean, the conference room, I know on the first floor has really been a kind of a nice flexible space. It's been really flexible. And we always viewed that basement space as a real multi-purpose space. It's a little nicer with it being,
Yeah, it's not like a dungeon at all.
Right, no.
White walls and the blue carpet.
It looks very nice.
Yeah,
You've done
I mean, it was a
good job.
challenge with it being a low ceiling and with all that mechanical and electrical attached to the structure. Putting the ceiling in was almost not, you could touch it, so we basically put that picture molding up, painted everything out flat black up above, went with carpet for the flooring to make it a little nicer. And then we basically took the old break room for district storage, and then we do have some storage down there, but storage is always a challenge.
One other question. So what you've given us is all the pictures, but we just had 35 or 40 minutes of information. When do we get all of this? I know Mary Kay was busy trying to write down the ad alternates and trying to. When do we get that documentation in writing?
I'd be more than happy. I mean, the project manual's about 800 pages, and then the drawings are, I can't know what the final count was, but that's all been printed, and you could either get it electronically.
I don't think I was suggesting the 800-page version, but in the past, in accompaniment to what you've given us, there would be a half a dozen or so pages that would outline what you're going out to bid for, and just some of the information that you just presented in a summary format, because we all would have just walked away from that time with different notes and information. And I think I'm just curious, what do we get to accompany these pictures?
I mean, I could.
Will that be included in the bid comparison on May 16th?
Oh, absolutely. You'll have everything from the base bid number and how that's broken down from profit bonds, insurance, all the way to electrical. Then you'll have each of the alternate bids, all the unit prices, and we'll have all that. I can certainly extract, if you want some more information, I can take some of the information out of the project manual that's more at the beginning with all the project dates, the issue on liquidated damages, what the base bids are, what each of the alternates are. I could extract that, and that would be a smaller document that wouldn't put you to sleep. But I'd be happy to share anything you would like. I mean, it's all available.
But the things that, like Mary Kay was talking about, those different, like we're saying, those will be
Oh, absolutely, on the 14th.
In the 14th, when we
Correct.
talk about what all those things are.
Well, because that's what we do is basically, even for the bidding, contractors are not happy about it, but we make them break their base bid down into all the trades because it helps us analyze their bid better. If we see that they have, $40,000 for demolition, everyone else has $100,000, we really want to talk to them about that 40, and is that number wrong? So that really helps. It's interesting to see side by side the comparison, and we'll have that. So we'll compare all the bids that we receive side by side, and then we'll have all the alternates and the unit prices. But prior to that, I'd be happy to work with Kim and Mike and get you whatever you'd like.
Just think a basic outline of what we've just talked about is not a bad thing to have in writing, but to accompany.
I could do a narrative.
All of the pictures that you gave us, which are very valuable. Obviously, a picture's worth 1,000 words. I believe that, but I do think it would be good to have some kind of summary or narrative that kind of goes along with this visual story. Okay. Kevin, I have another same type of question, but Joel had asked earlier about programming and adding and that kind of thing. Is there also some narrative or accompanying document to this process that says we currently serve X number of students in this capacity, and with this effort, we would project to be able to serve Y number of students in this added capacity? Like I don't feel like we have any of that program information or what the anticipated benefit is, how many additional students. I mean, all of those things, unless I missed it, I don't think we as a board have received that information.
Yeah, we can provide that for you.
Okay. I know when Linda gave her presentation, she talked about a full day programming for a smaller group of students. So I know that was one piece that that we don't have this year. That would be new.
Well, and some of the students that we currently are sending to other districts would be coming back. And I think we have bits and pieces and a lot of conversation. There were a lot of conversation about, what may be possible. But now that we're actually down to brass tacks, right? Here we are with an actual plan and a layout and all this thought that's gone into it. I think that we need to have the benefit of the words that go with it to say, and with all of this work that Cashman's group has done, this is the resulting program.
Sure.
Programming changes.
Wasn't some of that in the staffing plan that we talked about at the meeting? There was some discussion about
some of it was in Linda's presentation, some of it was in the staffing plan. So I guess that's kind of my point. Is it's sort of all over the place, right?
But it does kind of flow. It's like this didn't just appear. Like this is something that.
Yeah, I didn't suggest that. I would just like to pull it from all of its various disparate places that we've seen bits and pieces and have it as part of, here's our early childhood plan for the following year. And there's a construction component, and there's a classroom component, and there's a number of students and a programming component. I think that's a package of information that comes together from a variety of sources.
Sure.
And I could do a narrative on the construction aspects that you could fold into that.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda, superintendent's report.
Just very briefly, our joint committee will be meeting again next Tuesday, the 23rd at 6:30, and we'll start in the high school commons and then break off into our subgroups of climate, strategic planning, facilities, and finance. And we've been having very good participation our last couple of meetings, and we are starting to reach conclusion on some of these areas. And for instance, with the facilities, I would anticipate at our May board meeting that there would be a presentation in terms of next steps for the district and what that group is planning. So again, that will be next Tuesday, the 23rd at 6:30, high school comments.
So that's also the spring concert night at Miller.
Is it?
It is.
For Miller?
At least according to my calendar, it is. So I just want to mention that.
And I'll just
All
put
right.
in, I'll just put in just a quick plug on that, and that's open for every district parent to come and participate on if they choose. With the climate committee meets that night, the academic strategic planning and the finance and facilities branch of that, and you can come for one meeting and participate, and if you have to miss the next month, fine, it's not a set thing, but it is an avenue that we have provided parents to become more involved with the decision-making process in our school, and we certainly could use more participation. I know we have a core group that shows up for the climate committee, but it would be great to see more faces there.
Sure.
Just not for Miller, apparently.
Well,
On
no.
this meeting.
Well.
Because it's exactly the same time. So I think, unfortunately.
Okay, did you have anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, are there any other public comments? Okay, then before we go into close, just to reiterate future meetings, our next board meeting will be April 30th at 7 o'clock. And that will be the organization meeting when we will welcome our new board members to the meeting, to the table. And then the joint committee meeting, April 23rd, 6:30.
Maria, I just had one comment, just because it's interesting sometimes to know what's going on in other districts around us. By accident, I happened to look at the ballot from another area from the election that just happened. And Wheaton District 200, CUSD 200, was going after a proposition, $17.6 million to build a new childhood center. Unfortunately, they weren't successful. However, it was very close. It's a huge district, and they were going for a huge bond issuance. It was, like I said, $17.6 million to completely rebuild their existing early childhood. But they had over 40% of the people that voted yes in the district. But obviously, that's not enough. But I just wanted to mention it because I think sometimes it's interesting to be aware of things that are going on in
That was
other
Wheaton,
places.
you said?
Yes, CUSD 200. So that was the only, on this last ballot in DuPage County, it was the only really school-related proposition that was out there. Unfortunately, I know they're very disappointed. You on their website, you can see they're very disappointed, obviously, but it was close.
You know what that says, though? That look at what it says about early childhood programs and the fact that we have already started.
Yeah.
And we are expanding it. I mean, obviously, that falls in with the small giant.
Well, it's a
plan,
big
so.
district. They have a dedicated building for early childhood already, but they obviously wanted to do a pretty sizable upgrade.
I have one small comment as well, on a separate note. When Mrs. Garcia spoke earlier this evening, I thought what she had to say had value, and not just in the fact that our board is not bilingual and makes decisions about ELL families, but also I feel her statement is important, and I would like to request that someone from our district approach Mrs. Garcia and make the effort to get it translated for the board and share it with us.
Okay, then the chair will entertain a motion to enter closed session for the purpose of discussing personnel issues and pending litigation, and to review closed session minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mr. Charleston?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mrs. Hancock?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yeah, we need to do that again. Sorry, Judy. I'm going to read this again. The chair will entertain a motion to enter closed session for the purpose of discussing personnel issues and probable litigation, and to review closed session minutes. So if we could now have a motion
So
again.
moved.
Second.
Okay, now roll call, please. Thank you, Kevin.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mr. Charleston?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mrs. Hancock?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Ms. Caparelli?
Yes.
And there will be a vote on closed session minutes after closed. So we're adjourned. We are back from closed session, and we have one action item. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the release of the closed session minutes dated February 2nd, 2012, May 3rd, 2012, and July 30th, 2012.
So moved.
Second. And roll call, please.
Ms. Caparelli?
Yes.
Mr. Charleston?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Mrs. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas? Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Okay, then the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.